Good evening. If you are joining us tonight, it is Monday night at 7 p.m., and you are here at the CARES Program Speaker Series, where every Monday night we bring an expert that shares on the topic of addiction and specifically support for the family members of those that are living with addiction. CARES stands for Communities and Relatives Empowered for Support. And our goal is, as we bring speakers every week, we bring speakers who can speak to the topic to provide resources, education, and most importantly, support. And this week is very special because I am joined by a good friend, Eli Yates, who is a member of the Cornerstone ATX community. Cornerstone is the church where we operate out of on Monday nights, and they've been gracious enough to open their doors every Monday and allow us to host these series. And Eli has been a loyal member, attending every Monday, and when he was living out of state, actually attending virtually online. So for those of you online, just know that this is a space for you as well as those who are here in person. And Eli, thank you so much for coming out here and spending some time with us.
Of course.
So, Eli, and for those of you who first time here, and for those of you who are online, just want to share that sometimes the talks that we have are personal. Oftentimes, it is personal for everyone involved there. And Eli, we met probably in the very first session that we had, and this was over a year ago because we kicked off the series March of 2025. We've
Correct.
had dozens of speakers since then, and you've been a faithful attendee here. So let me just ask you, Eli, what brought you to this program?
It was a different setting for me. I'm always a person, which y'all probably notice when I'm talking. I'm not really a big first time probably sharing publicly. Um, and I guess I got an overwhelming sense of community the first time I was here. And even though it didn't really resonate with me at first, like me and you've talked about, because I always strived away from the clinical side of everything, thinking that I had the answers for everything. And there was always something every time I either watched or came here, at least one thing that I took away from it, which helped me a lot.
And Eli, you and I have talked over the past year because every time we've had a talk, every time we've had someone presenting, we've always had a moment to be able to share and see what this means to you. So, when you first heard of the CARES program, how was it explained to you? What was the purpose of that program?
It was something different for me. I've always seen things where it was of the individual that's struggling with something. And it was very, I don't know, it just kind of hit me that it was something for families and people that are close to people who are struggling with it. I've never heard of something like that. And it was super interesting to me.
I remember going back to that first time that we met. We were all kind of in this really scary place, right? Because we'd never built something like this before. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of this program, it started off as a venture between a church and our university, University of Texas of Austin, and the idea of, can we build a space or a program that is safe for the family members of those in addiction? People who are asking questions like, I am not a person in addiction. I don't have that problem. And I'm having a hard time understanding what my family member is going through. So, can we create a safe space where you can give us information and resources? And this is what you started attending to.
Hmm.
So, Eli, if you don't mind me asking, you can share as little or as much as you want, but what is your direct connection to this community?
Definitely being, I felt like I got a strong connection when I felt a lot of the speakers who shared their personal stories, not just clinical stories of where they had a son or daughter or other things like that. I never really saw someone who had a parent who went through it like I did. And I guess that made me look at things a lot different when speakers came up and stuff like that. I was able to actually, I don't know, look at it a different way.
And we hear a lot of that, but quietly in corners. Like
Hmm.
what you just said right now is something very big. People will talk about, I have a spouse or I have a child in addiction, but we don't often hear from people that say, I have a parent. And Eli, why do you think people don't hear that story enough?
I think it's as much as I can, I have two young kids now. I'm a new parent myself. It's hard for me to ever imagine me having to see my child go through addiction when they get older or any type of anything similar to it. But with me, when I was growing up, those things were kind of, for the longest time, a norm. I got used to it. Um, in my special case, it happened very quickly. So I didn't really have time to analyze it, digest it. It just became an immediate norm for me. And I think that's one of the big separations.
So you have some people that have grown up with it, some people where there's a shift that happens. If you were to talk to people out there, either online or here in person, who are saying, I'm at that point where I'm starting to see something with my parents, and I'm feeling like something's off, but I don't know how to describe it. I mean, what would you point out to them?
One of my biggest things that I wish I would have known, obviously I didn't know because I wasn't an adult with critical thinking skills, is understanding that my dad's life was just as complex as mine. He had his own childhood, his own problems, his own complexity surrounding his life, that I felt like I was the only one that had that.
Mm.
Yeah, obviously, teenagers think the world revolves around them, and it's just not the case. If whether you're my age, 27 or 17, always understand that everyone's life is just as complex as yours. Everyone carries their own problems. Everyone carries their own struggles. And once you start understanding that, that paints a broader picture of what someone is struggling with.
Eli, you're talking about what a lot of people share, this empathy for a person in addiction. Oftentimes we hear people that just write them off and say, well, if you loved me enough, you would stop doing what you're doing.
Mm.
If you cared about your child enough, you would stop what you're doing. But you're saying something very unique, which is that they have their story. There's complexity there. There's a struggle, and trying to understand that there. Um, have you ever been in that spot where anger or just frustration?
Oh, yeah. It's not even just being a teenager, even if this stuff was happening to me now. There's things that still happen that doesn't take away from the things that they're doing to you real time.
Mhm.
It's just helps you understand when you step back and look at it. I mean, my dad stole my car when I was a teenager. Um, at that time, regardless if I was 27 at the time or not, I'd been mad, regardless. Anybody would be. And but now I can understand that when I step back and I look at it, he didn't do that to hurt me. He did that because he's not himself. I know my dad, and I hope he's listening to it. I look up to my dad a lot. I get a lot of my hard work from my dad, my empathy, my honesty. I get it from him. Something evil made him to something that he's not. And I make sure I remind him that ever since I've been talking to him for the past 3 years, that I remind him of that every time I talk to him, that I know who you really are. I know that.
And that's a powerful statement, to be a person that holds on to hope and then shares that message of hope and a vision of hope for that person. Was there a moment for you where you were like, okay, I'm going to shift from being angry to being someone that wants to help? And what was that moment? What was that shift for you?
That actually happened before I even got in contact with him again when he was in prison. It was something where I saw what it was doing to my mom, having that hate, that anger. It was just destroying her. Because my mom's not someone who's very hateful. I'm not a person that's very hateful. And I saw what it does to her, and I was like, I just can't do that anymore. Um, and my mom's got rid of that hate in her heart too. Once you let that go, and like I said, it's hard to do real time. I didn't have contact with him. I knew where he was. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't, I wasn't worried about hearing on the news he was dead in the parking lot somewhere. I knew where he was, and that helped out a lot. But I can't speak for on real time, because in real time I definitely was still wrapped up in all the anger and everything and teenage angst and, stuff like that.
Eli, you mentioned another important thing, which is there's other family members involved,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's loved ones that you care about, and we hear that message too a lot with families. Is I want my dad or my mom to be sober, and I've got my other family members, I've got my siblings as well. So, what do you see in that space when you look at other families that are struggling with this?
Well, it's funny you mentioned siblings too. I'm the oldest by 7 years from my closest sibling. I grew up with a very normal dad for until I was 11 or 12. Like, cut the grass with him, work with him on job sites, work on cars. He played video games with me, and then all that shifted quickly. So I was still able to, even up to now, I can still carry all the good memories I have. But my siblings have a very different picture. By the time they were able to have memories and all this other stuff, he was either gone or just not himself, angry. Um, and that's honestly been a hard shift. But it's also, I used to think it was a burden for me, but I eventually just told them, like, y'all don't actually understand the type of person that our dad is. And I was able, and now they have a connection to him, which I've been able to talk them through and stuff like that. And I'm grateful that I was able to have that realization to help them.
You played an important role because Eli, the way you're describing it, you're the one person of the kids that got to see the best of your father when the rest of the kids were seeing things that were challenging, that were hard. They couldn't envision it because they hadn't experienced it, but you had.
Mm-hmm.
And you held on to that piece. You said earlier, too, about how your dad, that a lot of good came from him. So we've got families out there that have a hard time seeing the good in their family because they're in such pain. Is there a path of healing for them? What does that look like?
It's always different for, obviously, I'm not an expert, of course. No
You,
clinical background at all. All my expertise comes from personal experience. And even that personal experience is very niche to me. It takes some people years. And not only that, like I said before, the reverse role of being a parent and seeing a kid go through that is way different than having a parent.
Mhm.
And um, one of the only the advice I can give you is just get rid of the hate and the anger in your heart. You have to, whether that be through faith, yourself, or both. Yeah, because I found that even before I even found faith. I just shed it completely because I saw that if you see the damage of that anger is doing to other people, you have to let it go. I'm not even really someone that considers myself a very empathetic person. I struggle with that a lot, but with my dad, I just had to force myself to be that way. And that's one thing I always I want to make sure that is my big message to this is understanding people have so much more complexity to themselves than you think. And that's with anyone you come in contact with. It helps you in all avenues of life. When you got a boss that's angry with you and parents angry with you, parents got addiction, someone else in your family, it's nothing personal. In my experience, anyway.
And you said you weren't the expert, but I gently with kindness, I want to challenge that. Everything you just shared in the short amount of time that we've been here, 15 minutes, shows an expertise. Your life, what you know and what you're sharing here in this space, including the message about letting go of anger. We've heard it said on the stage by people that the emotion, the anger, sadness that we all feel, normal stuff, healthy stuff, it's an alarm system. It tells us something's off here. But what happens when you are chronically locked in to that emotion or to that anger and it just nonstop and how it starts to break you down? So when you tell people you got to let go of that anger, what's helped you be able to let go of it?
Still, and don't want to be a broken record, but was that understanding um, of, and most of that came later on. It wasn't immediate. It was just a first thought, and then seeds kept getting planted in it. Understanding my dad's raising, understanding the struggles that he's been through, whether that be death of family members, things that he struggled with, Um, Also, him having real world problems. I mean, uh, losing jobs, stuff like that. I mean, this is stressful. I know what the stress is. I'm an adult. I know what that stress is. And once you start understanding that and also letting go of that anger, they both coincide with each other and they just eventually just shed each other out. And then eventually you can actually just look at them as a person, not what they're attached to, the disease that's attached to them.
Eli, there's a lot of people that gather in different spaces, whether it's a church or a community spaces, and addiction is happening in their homes. And they just either don't feel comfortable talking about it or don't feel safe enough talking about it. Have you experienced that? What was that like for you?
Yeah, definitely coming from someone who is not a big sharer. Y'all have a special treat because I'm not a big sharer at all. Um, Opening up to anybody, and I'm a little biased, I would definitely say a local church is a huge, and finding a program like this, which I'm very adamant about, especially this specific one. It will, some people like me, and you've talked about, some people just don't thrive in clinical settings. I don't thrive in clinical settings. I like to just sit down with someone and talk normally, like how me and you have plenty of times. It's a natural conversation. If you find someone to have a natural conversation with that you can just be comfortable with, you'll be amazed on how many thousands of dollars you would either spend on therapy just to let that stuff out. Because sometimes you replay it in your head all the time, same things you could be telling someone else, but just it escaping your body and saying it does miracles, in my opinion.
Yeah, what I hear you sharing is the concept of community and having a space where you do feel safe, where you can have those conversations, where you can be open, authentic, you can be honest, you can be vulnerable. So, what's your advice to communities out there that want to create a space that's safe? What is it that they need so that people who don't normally talk might open up? What would you like to see more of?
Definitely more of social settings. Um, some people can't even get on stage. You asked me a year ago to get on stage, I'd be like, nah. But humans just thrive for the one-on-one. Have to have a one-on-one. Some people just can't sit in and listen to something, and like me and you've talked about before, is they can come to one of these things and a speaker talks about something and nothing hits. Then being humans are just going to be like, "What? This is just not for me." And I've had plenty of that thoughts before coming here, but I just stuck to it and I stuck through it because I wanted to support it, and just that any community that's trying to, or any church or anything that is trying to get this type of setting like we're doing now or have similarities, you have to be able to have that one-on-one with people.
You know, all of these talks that we've had, including the one that we're having tonight, they're posted online. They now become part of an encyclopedia of different guests who have shared their experiences, their knowledge, resources here. When you think back at all the conversations, the talks, the Monday nights that you've attended, what's some of the advice that was shared there that stuck with you?
It's a good question. I think they've all stuck out to me. Definitely not the first couple of three, I'll be honest, because that was when I was my most closed off. I was like, I'm not getting nothing, but I like Renee. I'll stay here. And honestly, there's always something you can grab from someone. And it's not really trying to give a lazy answer. I really have at least gotten one thing, one good thing from every single one. If you just open yourself and you receive what's being told to you, you will at least gather something, whether it's a new bit of information, a new way of thinking, a new boundary you want to set, anything. And as long as you listen, you will 100% retain it.
So, a little bit of disclosure on my end here. The hardest thing for me to hear is a compliment. So you're saying, hey, first three I stayed here. I like Renee. The honest thing is, it's hard for me to hear that, and I think a lot of people have a hard time kind of hearing that. Why do we, those of us, because I'm also the son of someone who struggled with addiction, also the oldest child, and someone who witnessed my father go through addiction. Why is it hard for us to kind of to see that, to have the spotlight on us there?
Well, because most of the time, you're the oldest. Things have, you're the firstborn. Everybody loves you, and all of a sudden, it's this dark cloud kind of goes over everything, distracts everybody, and stuff like that. And as children, we're all narcissists, and we're all, self-centered. Like, once again, think the world revolves around us, and all that kind of just goes crumbling down. And mine, it was crumbling down, but everything was centered on me because I was the oldest. So my mom confided a lot of stuff in me. I knew every single detail, what my dad was doing and where he was up to, who he was with. And I mean, that just shut me off from a lot of things. And I don't know if you've had similarities to that or not, but I mean, it makes it extremely difficult to talk about everything because I know everything. I have no hidden secrets. My dad's told me everything now, and when I was young, my mom just bombarded me, even though she didn't mean to in a negative way. She just bombarded me with everything that I shouldn't have known, honestly, at that moment in time.
Those of us who are in that position, where we're the oldest, where we're confided in. A couple of weeks ago, we had a speaker, Mayan Herman, and she was talking about family systems. She was talking about different roles that people play, and one of those roles being a hero role, meaning that you're the one who has to rescue the family. You're the one who has to carry this. And that's a heavy burden, right? As a child, when you're having to care for mom, dealing with the sadness and the depression of what's going on, dad, the secrets and everything that's going on, siblings, and making sure that they're safe. That's a lot of heaviness. What kept you from going down those same paths?
I was pretty close to going down the same path as my dad. It was very close. It's funny. I did cocaine a couple of times before I ever even did weed. Never done anything like that, and it was all to drown myself from everything my mom was exposing me to, and having to step up in a role that honestly I wasn't prepared for. I was still a child. I did cocaine for the first time at 12, and then off and on till I was 17, and my mom didn't even know. And I thought I was using it to cope. And then one day she just saw a change in me, and luckily I had the willpower just to stop it then and there, where she didn't know what was going on, but she told me that, hey, whatever you're doing, it needs to stop. And then I just stopped. I've never really found a coping mechanism for it. I just found a way to let it go. Some people can't let it go. Some people need to have a coping thing. Like how I cope with my other stuff, I go backpacking. That's my coping. Before that, it was nicotine. But yeah, backpacking, hiking is my coping for normal stuff. But with my dad, it was never really anything at all. I just had to shed it. I had to get rid of it.
Yeah. And these conversations are tough to have. They're not easy to have. They're hard to watch and listen to. And again, you may have people, and I know we're going to have people online who are struggling with their own addiction and are seeing their children in you. They're seeing, I'm struggling, but I see what my son's future can be like and the impact. What message would you have for that parent that's having a hard time kicking this?
It's a tough question to answer. Because I think I'll say what it took for my dad. That's how I can answer it. It probably took until my dad saw me in person after being in prison for so long, of realizing that what happened to me was there's nothing he really could have done. What he thought he was doing, which was in the midst of his addiction, being a very harsh and strict parent, was to keep me away from a lot of things, but he actually put me into a deep hole. But he also gained a lot of perspective on my end because he didn't want me to end up like him. But in turn, I could have easily went down the same path. So your child will definitely eventually understand. It's the same thing I told my siblings, is that you will understand when you see him in person again, when you all this other stuff. You see those slight differences are going to stick out to you. I don't really know how to answer that. That's such a niche question of
You know,
like it's just everyone's situation is so different. But with mine, it was just I was lucky enough to have it come somewhat naturally. I could have easily been in the same boat, but my wife reminds me a lot that she's proud of me for not being part of that statistic,
yeah.
and she reminds me how I should be proud of myself for not being that part of that. But yeah,
Eli, I was going to say here that we've talked about a lot of identities that you hold, being a son, being a caretaker, being someone who is really holding this huge responsibility and weight in the family. But at the same time, through the years, now being 27, as I said, 27 years old, your identities have also grown. You are now a husband, you're a father, you're a family man. So tell me a little bit about that message of hope. Like what's different about you today with all these experiences that you bring to your family now?
I definitely try to be as much as I can, even though, like I said, I struggle with it, being open and available for everything. And I take all the good qualities that my dad had, and I just take those and hold on to them. I want to make sure that I still honor him as my father, and that I display those same good qualities that he had, which is hardworking, provider. He was very funny. Just being attentive and not latching on to those negative things. You latch onto them, you're going to become them. And I know that it's what kept me away from going down that path. I saw the destruction, I saw everything, and I'm never ever going to put that on my kids ever. And I've told him that too, and he understands wholeheartedly because he knows how that feels. And honestly, even now, he's helping me be a better dad. You know,
Wow. You have a lot of people that come into spaces like this that 12, 17, and have nothing to compare to. So just like you were describing, they see their parents, but they don't see something that's out of the norm. This is just life as it's been for the last couple of years. So for those family members out there or kiddos who may be watching and going, something's wrong, but I just don't see it. What can we do for them? How do we help them break out of those kind of chains that are happening?
I'll definitely speak to my personal stuff just in case someone else is going through what I went through. My mom didn't know what my dad was going through until last minute. And I saw a lot of those things before her, but I was a child. I didn't know. I didn't know what to say, what to do. Um, if you're if the other parent doesn't know, you need to speak up. You need to, whether you're the oldest, youngest, middle, doesn't matter. If you notice something, say something. I probably could have. Sometimes that's hard for me to live with. There's some things I could have prevented, for sure. Events or anything. I did things that fed into his addiction. I helped him out in a lot of ways that probably put him in a deeper hole. There's things that I kept from my mom. Um, don't do that.
Mhm.
I mean, it almost cost me and my mom's relationship, and that's hard on me sometimes. But that's the only person you can rely on.
Mhm.
It's the other parent.
And Eli, in a few minutes, we're going to open up for questions, which is part of what we do here when we do Monday nights. We have deep conversations like what you're witnessing here. And then we open up the space because people are curious and they have questions. Where do I go? What do I do in this scenario? So as we cue that microphone to go up, you talk about how the responsibility sometimes or guilt that we might feel of holding secrets or enabling certain behaviors. Um, and you only know what you know, right, at the time. So I'm gonna come back to a question that I asked earlier, but what can communities like the CARES program or spaces where we're trying to bring awareness, what can they do to help take away that guilt, to offer information? What would you want to have heard back then?
That there's a space for you, that there's a people that are going through the same thing, or not, maybe not in the same thing, but just in the same ecosystem. Like people are struggling with this, you know, obviously around here where we are locally, it's so many people, but I come from a small town, you know, everyone struggle with it, but you feel so distant from everybody.
Mm.
And I'm sure it's probably just as threatening out here that you have same type of statistics, but there's a million people around you. But knowing that there would be a small localized group where I can go to, even at 12, I mean, would have probably definitely changed a lot. And I would definitely would have loved to hear that.
No, that's powerful. Eli, I want to thank you for your time, for being here. There's so much to say, but I want to emphasize that you have been part of this program from the very beginning. You've seen every speaker that's come on board here. You've shared what's connected with you, what's stuff that you would save for later, or stuff that you would say it's not for me, but I know someone that it could be for. And here you are, you're literally a walking testament of what it's like to build relationships, to feel safe, and then to be in a space where you can give back. So, Eli, I'll ask you that's the last question here. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I definitely see myself, which me and my wife plan on doing anyway, is having my own ranch, and also probably, my workers are people who I help people get over their addiction for sure. I know we've had some speakers on here that do run those operations and stuff like that, and that's definitely what I plan on doing. Hopefully, coming back here into the greater Austin area and helping a lot of people with that.
Beautiful. Well, Eli, you've done that. You've done that. You've helped this community. Today marks one of those other major steps that you're taking
Mm.
towards that plan. And so it's an honor. And I know I texted you that earlier
Yeah.
that it's an honor to share space with you. And I'll say this out loud again. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. So thank you. And as a reminder for everyone, both here in person and also live, what you see here, we, the camera's pointed on us here, but the space is available to those here who want to ask questions, and we keep it anonymous. So when we open up the Q&A space, ask any questions that you have, either of Eli or for myself. And just know that we only ask that if you are referring to a family member or someone, that it's a family member or a friend, and we'll hold back on the names here. But again, yeah, we have a microphone moving around. So anyone with a question?
So Eli, thanks a lot for opening up, and that's a that's a tough discussion to have, but the answers that come from you are incredibly important for a lot of people. There's a lot of folks will see this on video. Curious, you're 27 now. Do you mind sharing the ages of your siblings and the spread and what the difference was? Because I was really curious about your obligation and how you felt about them as you knew what was going on and they didn't, and their memories. And then could you expand just a little bit about how's your relationship with each one of them now?
It's a really good question. A lot of this stuff started when the brunt of it was 13, 14. There's a 7-year difference between me and my, next oldest sibling, which is, that would be 6, 7 at the time. And then my other sister, she was 4, and then my other brother was 2. So there was a big spread. I mean, I had a 2-year-old brother at 14, you know, and I did the best I could to I had to take on a lot of roles. I had to be a father figure. I also kind of in a way had to be a partner with my mom because she had to put all that stuff into me. She didn't have no one to talk to, family super far away on the other side of the state. And she didn't really know who else to talk to. Small town politics too. Everybody talks about everything. She didn't feel safe. It was very tough. It was. But my relationship with them now is just as good as it was then. At first, especially my next oldest sibling, held a lot of resentment for kind of things I was telling her. Kind of felt like I was pushing, like forgiveness. But I did always try to express that that's up to you. Because one day you'll be an adult. She's an adult now. She just turned 21, or 20. But she is now understood that that's what that means. And all the rest of them are doing just fine. You know, they saw him. He got out December 15th of last year. And, you know, he's doing really good. He's seen him a couple times, and they're doing great.
All right, we've got a microphone going around. We got another question.
So, as a participant, I think you have a unique view into not only the program, but what is it that you look in hindsight over the past year that maybe you could speak to say, here's some things that I think maybe could enhance what's already a great program. But, as a participant, you could say, hey, here's some things I saw from the spectator seat looking forward, or the participant seat. Here's some things that I think that maybe if we adjust and invest in some of this, that might help bolster some more help for the community. Does that make sense?
Yes. And Renee probably already knows my answer, probably multiple answers. But definitely more, which is no pressure on anybody, but more upfront testimonies on what you went through. I even, talked to Renee about even us doing testimonies of people that want to come forward and share some of the personal things that they've actually put in this short snippets and stuff. Because like I said, I struggled with the clinical side, the facts. I mean, for the most part, when we're actively going through something, like when my dad stole my car, I wasn't worried about what was blocking off his receptors. He stole my car. I wasn't worried about that. It's a good fact to know, but I'm just not worried about it. It's good to know that, like, someone's like, hey, my dad stole my car too. Having those open and honest testimonies of, like, it doesn't have to be super personal, doesn't have to have names, doesn't have nothing. It's just, I've been through this. You're not alone. Those are definitely things that I have been talking to Renee about, and I would definitely love to see in the future here.
That's great. We have time for one more question. If there's one more out there, we'll leave space. One more.
Hi, Eli. I was wondering, what brought you to the point where of forgiveness for your dad? Because I'm sure growing up that wasn't the first thing on your mind. And did something happen to make that come forward? Did somebody help you with that? And what made you kind of think to yourself, there's something not right here, and I need help? And you might not even think I need help, but I need somebody that I can talk to about this. But the part about the forgiveness, I mean, that's a whole journey in itself, I would imagine. That's just a thought, but I'm just kind of wondering what helped you to get to that point.
That's a really good question. It was very sudden for me. I didn't, like I said, I didn't grow up with faith. I didn't have that. I only had my mom and one other close friend. I didn't have no one else to confide into. It was my special circumstance of being at that weird age of on the close to being a young adult to still being a child. And I had to step up very quickly. That first initial push of forgiveness was I had to force it onto myself. And I wish I had faith then. It would have made it 10 times easier. But the whole journey is still happening now. But it did not fully come to like a close until I got to see him in person. After going through everything I have as an adult, having kids, getting married, also divorcing, buying a house, all those things helped me when I went to go see him again, of me looking at him as another man and telling him that I forgive him. Because I waited until I saw him in person to do that. And also grew up with a very stoic dad, never saw that man cry until I said that. And once I saw a lot of those emotions and stuff like that, that's when it finally came to a close. So it was from the age of 14 until last year. But that first push, I couldn't even tell you where it came from. I saw the pain that my mom was going through, and I knew that I just couldn't live with that. So I just had to learn to take the good parts, love those, work on the rest of the stuff later. That just worked for me, though. That won't work for everybody. But that's kind of what my journey was like.
Thank you.
Of course.
Well, with that, we're going to wrap up our Q&A time here. And it doesn't mean that we're done here, but for those online, just know that we're going to come offline, but I want to send you a couple resources here. If this is your first time seeing us, just keep in mind that we are online. It's carescommunity.us. And there you'll find also our upcoming speakers, including speakers that we have lined up for next Monday and the Monday after, all the way through May. So please check out the website as we update that. Also, you'll have links to our YouTube channel where you're going to see all of our previous speakers and the different topics that they've talked about. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So we encourage you to take a look at what we've got up there online. Please, if you like it, do click the like button, hit subscribe, share. It helps spread the word that here in a church, Cornerstone ATX, here in Lakeway, Texas, we have a program every Monday night where people are raw, they're open, they're honest, they're vulnerable, and they're sharing a message of hope. So our goal is three parts: provide education, create a space of support, and share resources. So tonight has definitely been another night, a wonderful night. And Eli, we thank you again for everything that you have shared, and encourage you to invite others to walk with us here. Last bit, if your first time here, same message we share every Monday night. If it's your first time online or in person, simple message: welcome home. So thanks for joining us and sharing time with us. We'll see you next Monday.